Welcome back. You were Talk today, almost 20 past 7, Thursday morning. We'll have the papers and look at them in a moment, but here is what else is coming up on this morning's programme.
Keir Starmer prepares to rally his party for a general election. In a major speech he's making this morning, saying things can get better. After 7:30, we'll ask if he can win over the public by being Blair 2.0.
Didn't Blair, wasn't his theme, things can only get better?
That's why we've said, is he going to harness?
See? Wake up, Jezza. Yeah, morning, old man. Yeah.
And at 7:45, as the XL bully ban comes into force, we'll ask a mother whose son was fatally attacked by one dog if she thinks the new rules go far enough. And we've got more analysis to come on Prince Andrew being named in the newly released Epstein files. The royal author Norman Baker will tell us what it means for the monarchy at 8:10.
Let's take another look at some of this morning's front pages. You're waking up to in the Telegraph. Bojo condemns the Met's Gaza probe after the Force, interesting, launched an investigation into Israel's alleged war crimes. That's the Met for you. The Mail focuses on the New Year mortgage price war. The paper says it'll boost Tory hopes as fixed-rate deals fall below 4%. And, of course, front page of The Sun, Luke on the bright side, say The Sun, as the teen dart sensation Luke Littler narrowly misses out on taking the top title. Let's just remember, 16 years of age.
And he dealt with the fact that he lost with such grace, I thought,
he
for
is
a
as
teenager.
humble as anything. If I had 40 million on the way, I'd be humble.
He's going to be amazing.
How many burgers is he going to eat for 40 million quid?
In the studio with us again, the writer Emma Wolf and the journalist James Bloodworth to go through some stories in the papers. James, shall we start with the I? We've just talked about Blair 2.0, but their headline talks about Trump 2.0 being a threat to the UK. That's the warning from some of our top diplomats. What are they concerned about?
They're concerned about if Trump wins the presidency next year, which is quite possible, yeah. So, first of all, Trump's threatened in the past to pull out of NATO or to stop funding NATO. The Congress in the United States has issued warnings about that before, members of Congress. And if that happened, if Trump pulled the plug on Ukraine, funding the war in Ukraine, for example, there's a good chance that Putin would feel emboldened. If the Americans pulled out of NATO, that would undermine the UK's... The UK would no longer have a nuclear deterrent because it relies on the Americans. And also Russia would probably invade the Baltic states and move into countries like Georgia. Because Putin's entire... he wants his historical legacy to be that he returned Russia to greatness of the Soviet Union. So if Trump pulls out of NATO, I think there's a huge threat to Europe and intelligence sharing with the US as well, because of Trump's proximity ideologically to Putin in some ways.
I'm fascinated by this, as I know you are, Emma, and this is in no way me saying that I support everything about Donald Trump, although if you ask Middle America economically, they were much better off under Trump. NATO's toothless and pointless and has shown itself to be a complete waste of space with what's going on in Gaza and Israel. COP28, the Paris Agreement, he refuses to have it. Is this another example, to take the other side, to take what you're saying, is this another example of this non-stop attempt by anybody and everybody to stop Donald Trump, with all of his failings, getting back to the White House? Because yes, and I take your point, we talked about indictment, that could derail him. It seems that every time something comes up, it merely strengthens his position.
It does strengthen, and it fuels the Trump voters and their reasons for voting for him. I'm in that weird position where I actually respect the fact that 80 million people voted for him and they have a choice. They have that democratic right. Whatever you think, like you, Jeremy, I don't particularly have much. Trump is not a particularly pleasant character if you delve any, deeper than...
Ask Middle America about how economically better off they were under Donald Trump.
And that's what, people are feeling it at the moment, and they're voting with their wallets and with their heads, and you have to respect his decisions not to get involved, not to spend billions and billions and billions of dollars on foreign wars and getting involved abroad. So
that's going to appeal.
It's going to be a
fascinating,
absolutely fascinating year.
We'll have to see how it develops. Should we talk about politics at home? Emma, inside the Times, return to the front line to save Britain. This is Reform's pitch to Farage.
Yeah. Well, yes, pitch to Farage. For Reform UK, yesterday, Richard Tice, their leader, held a big press conference, which got lots and lots of coverage. And that Reform are widely seen as probably the kingmakers, or probably the people that let Labour in by the back door.
Yeah.
However we put it, they are probably going to split the Tory vote calamitously at the next election, whenever that happens. Sir John Curtis, the eminent pollster, has been saying that they're undoubtedly the Tories' worst nightmare. Up to 1 in 6 Tory voters who voted Tory in 2019 could be planning to vote reform. And I mean,
even within the Conservative Party, they are really concerned about the impact of reform.
They're massively terrified.
If we listen to Lee Anderson, more so than they are of Labour.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Reform are going to probably take, they may well not win a seat, but they could take millions of Tory votes. And yeah, exactly, Lee Anderson's been saying
You take 6 or 8 or 10,000 in every constituency, that makes a massive difference.
It does make a massive difference.
You get 10% of the vote and no seats. But that Kingmaker, I wouldn't agree with that. But absolutely, this could let Keir Starmer in through the back door.
They have gone from 0 to around 9–10%, which is astonishing what they've done. And what Richard Tice, the leader, who isn't charismatic. I mean, he's okay as a, a lot of people say he's nothing like Farage. What he was saying yesterday was interesting.
Anybody's like Farage, are they?
Well, Farage is electric with people. Whatever you think of him, he is electric. People gravitate towards him. He's Boris Johnson, but on steroids, really. I mean, he's hugely popular. And Tice has been saying, he may come back. He may come back as leader, and actually there's indications that Richard Tice would stand aside for Farage, but for now, like a good poker player, Farage is holding not showing his hand too early, so we still don't know.
He's been coy, isn't he, Nigel Farage, about whether he's actually going to make a return, and it might
got a taste for publicity after the jungle. He loved it.
That they need him.
Well, I mean, I don't think he's popular in the country as a whole. He's popular with the Tory right and with the Tory grassroots, and the idea that this is kind of an intra-Tory party, an intra-right argument, because Farage is the arch Brexiteer. His lifetime project was Brexit, and even Farage has said Brexit was a failure. And you now have 62% of people in the country also say Brexit was a failure. So I mean, this idea that Farage comes back and saves the country, when one of the things that people are angry with at the moment is the fact that his entire lifetime's project hasn't worked out. I find that a bit far-fetched.
I think also about him, I think you're right. I think he wouldn't come back unless he could make a success of whatever he attaches his support to. James, let's crack on Daily Mail, page 2. Bosses at Britain's biggest companies will have earned more by lunchtime today than the typical worker will over the whole of 2024.
Yeah, so I mean,
I think that's no way to disrespect
really depressing.
Piers Morgan at all.
This is something called Fat Cat Thursday, and it comes around every year. It's the day in the year when statistics show that the typical FTSE 100 chief exec takes home what the average worker will take a whole year to earn. So it's the average FTSE 100 executive now takes home 3.81 million, which is 109 times more than the average salary, which is £34,963. It's kind of...
What does this tell us, James, that they earn huge salaries? I mean, we know this.
Yeah, but I think it's the reason for this is kind of to show the kind of multiple of what an executive earns compared to someone working for the organisation, because it's gone up massively in recent years, and I think it depends what they do. So I mean, I think it's more of an issue.
Now, January the 4th, they've already earned.
Yeah, so I think
they've barely been back 1 day, 2 days.
I know, and it gets shorter every year, which is the purpose of this is to show how these salaries are going up. And I think it doesn't always bother people. It depends on the person, depends on the company. But I think when you have, say, heads of chief execs of like the water companies, for example, where they're pumping effluent and sewage into our rivers and oceans, and then you find they're getting these huge salaries and bonuses. I think that's when it really annoys people.
Yeah.
Sorry, I checked the headline in the Sun newspaper online, team, backstage, please, about Prince Andrew before we talk about that. Let's crack on. Daily Express, page 21. I can't remember what this story is.
We talked about this first thing this morning. Quite a lot of the papers have covered this. Poor sleepers in their 30s and 40s, I hope you had a good night's sleep, are more likely to suffer memory problems a decade later.
What?
75.
What?
I don't know, he just misgendered me.
This really worries me, this story, because I have started to forget things. Dave, don't say a thing in my ear. And I spent my 30s and 40s doing breakfast shows and early...
it's shocking. It's shockingly bad for you.
Hello?
A whole bunch... What?
Sorry, Mary?
A whole bunch of us in the Green Room were talking about the fact that getting up at 2, 3 in the morning, even if you go to bed at 9, 10 at night, it doesn't ever get normal. The body doesn't ever adjust to getting up in the middle of the night.
That's the weird thing.
It's still not right. The body, it doesn't... night workers are, famously Night shift are
You have to be
famously
quite. You have to
bad
be
for your
quite.
body.
Yeah, night
Famously
workers.
bad for your
I
diet,
get that.
for everything.
Yeah.
It really isn't normal. Okay, yeah, of course you adjust once you've had a coffee. I feel great.
No,
at 4
but
in the
you
morning.
have to be
But it's not-
disciplined. The overnight workers, and I get that.
Yeah.
You hit a wall at 3 o'clock. If you're going to get up like we do, didn't sound right, did it? 3 or 4 o'clock, you have to go to bed by 8
You have to go
or
to
9.
bed
You have to
early,
be
but also the
disciplined.
body still struggles to adjust. Anyway, this study is showing that basically, as you say, really poor cognitive performance, a real decline was marked in those 30 to 40-year-olds who got terrible sleep. But what they do say is it's quality of sleep, not quantity. So it's not about getting a lot of sleep, it's about getting decent quality
4-hour
sleep.
blocks,
Do you
right?
know the thing that will really help, Jeremy? Giving up alcohol. So
Yeah, I know.
You're
but
on the
see-
right
really-
trajectory.
So I've given up alcohol, I'm not sleeping, and I'm really hacked off. But what I'm going to do, and I'm going to get Emily into this story, and we're going to get Emma to lead it. No disrespect to you, James. In the Sun, page 5. If you're depressed this morning, go and live in Manchester, because apparently Manchester rain could be an aphrodisiac because it's the top place in the United Kingdom to have it outside.
Is anyone here from Manchester?
I spent 15 years in Manchester.
Right, well, it's
and
the
I
top
never,
place-
ever went outside.
It's the top place for hanky-panky.
Is that what do you mean by that? Emma?
Al fresco romps.
What does that mean?
Having
Emma?
sex outdoors.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah, you wanted me to say it. Okay.
Yeah.
So number 1, al fresco top spots in the UK. Number 1 is Manchester. London, sadly, is down at number
Of course
6.
it is, because you'll probably be, I don't know, burgled or something.
It's cold in Manchester, though. 12%.
And very rainy in Manchester.
Yeah.
Glasgow, are you joking?
A nice picture of 2 people on a bench.
Norwich, that's
Who
interesting,
did they
because a lot of
survey
them, yes.
for this?
Yeah.
They surveyed locals. Around 12% of Manchester of Manx have had sex outdoors, apparently, and then Sheffield is down at the bottom of the 10.
Emma,
I mean-
why? Sorry, I'm put off by Emily shaking her head. I'm not even looking at Emily. Why is this important? Why is there a survey about where people have sex?
Well, it's the sun. And it's early January, and maybe they didn't want to cover politics. or
James
anything
Bloodworth, I never thought I'd
important.
say this to you. Al fresco sex? You want to talk about it?
No comment. I've just noticed that they're almost all in the north, which is maybe people in the north are more adventurous because it is colder and wetter
Chilly.
up there.
Maybe it's the only way to keep warm.
I was thinking about beaches and sand getting into your swimming suits and things like that, because that's a lot
Rosie
warmer.
Wright, any
place.
conversation about
No.
al fresco? Emily Rose Adams.
Just thinking of what you'd get a very cold bottom up north doing that, surely.
Why would you say that?
It's
Why
freezing.
would you say your bottom would get
You
cold?
just get very freezing.
Brilliant. OK, well, let us know. Please let us know. I don't know
Or
what else
don't.
to say.
Emma, James, thank you
Thank
very
you.
so much. They'll be back with more stories from
Wow.
Inside the Papers in just under an hour.